Today, I want to start with a little bit different than what we've ever started before. We're going to go to a different website, and I'm going to show you a small little clip. This is from an author who writes books, okay? And what he does is part of the stuff that he does is he has 5 basic concepts that he likes to do in writing his books. And what we're doing inside of Adilas is we're trying to kind of tell the story, okay? So I'm going to use this teeny little clip. It's probably about 5 minutes, so it's not super long or anything. And then we're going to kind of go into it, and we're going to show how Adilas does the same kind of feature, okay? So what I'm going to do, just so you can kind of follow along if you wanted to, is basically I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to go to www.brandonmull.com. This guy, he's a New York Times best-selling author. He's written a number of books, The Beyonders, Candy Shop Wars, also like Fablehaven, like kind of fiction-type writer is what he does. And it's kind of fun stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to a small little piece of the puzzle and make sure that I have my volume turned on. So what we do is I go to this little spot right here for the educators and parents. Looks like it's still trying to load. It's not allowing me to click it. And then down towards the bottom, there's a fun one that kind of talks about what makes the best books and stuff. We're going to come on down. And right here, what makes a great book? And I will turn my sound on here to make sure that we can hear it.
There's all different kinds of stories, all different kinds of genres, right? You've got mystery, your suspense, your classic literature, you've got your sci-fi, your fantasy, your romance. But I think the great books, or really underrated books, all have a few things in common. And that's why I try to focus on it. Right? The first thing I think a good book needs is great characters. If you don't care about the characters, you don't care what happens to the characters. The rest of the book doesn't matter unless the characters relate to or feel like you're like, or at least be interested to them.
I'm going to go ahead and pause it and see if I can kind of let it catch up a little bit. I imagine it's because all of us are using all of this Wi-Fi in here, and so it's. I'm just going to kind of see if it'll buffer for a second, and then I'm going to let it go through. But just as a generic thing, okay, just to kind of preface what he's going to end up saying, he's going to say characters, and characters need to have relations, and then the relations actually create. There's some sort of trouble that needs to happen. What is the problem? Why do you need these characters even? And then eventually they make decisions, which creates cause and effects or consequences. And so, like, as a rough overview, that's what's going to happen. Looks like it's buffered plenty. I'm going to go ahead and play it again here.
A great book, no matter what category it fits in, a book needs great characters. Those characters have to have relationships. As those characters matter more to each other, they're going to matter more to the readers. Some of those relationships could be that they're enemies, they could be friends, they could be family relationships, teacher-student relationships. There's so many types of relationships. What's important is that a good book needs characters who have profound relationships with one another, and then they face interesting trouble, interesting problems. The trouble is what's going to make the book interesting, and watching the characters try to overcome that trouble. That's why at the end of the book you get happily ever after. Once students are happy, guess what? The story's over. There's nothing left. So a good book has characters who have relationships, who face trouble, and then make decisions, tough decisions, to try to overcome that trouble, and then consequences flow from those decisions. Hopefully, if those consequences feel realistic, the book feels honest, the book feels true, and even if it's a fantasy adventure, the story feels real. And so if I was going to break down my 5 most important elements in the book, it goes to characters, relationships, trouble, decisions that the characters make, and then consequences that the characters deal with. If a book has those things, if that's working, I don't care what category it is, it's going to take me on a good ride.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to that. What it does is it kind of introduces just a little bit about where we're headed today, okay? What is accounting? What is accounting? Our goal today, we are going to be playing in kind of this upper echelon of the puzzle, alrighty? So just to kind of introduce it, most people when they think of accounting, they think of 2 things. A thing called the income statement, or your P&L, your profit and loss, or a thing called the balance sheet. Is that where you start, or is that where you end? I'm just curious. Open conversation. What do you guys think? Start or end there?
End.
Okay.
Balance sheet starts.
What's that?
Balance sheet starts.
Okay. Okay.
You have to put some money in the bank, or you have to do something
Okay.
to create and start.
Okay, so what I'm going to kind of propose and how we're going to, I totally agree with what Mick said. He says, in order for your business to start, something has to happen, okay? You put an investment in, you get some money, or you just say, hey, I'm just going to start selling something. Like some sort of action needs to happen, okay? If no action happens, do you actually need a balance sheet if nothing's happened? You don't, okay? So I would kind of say it for cause and effect relationships. This is the cause, and the effect starts becoming what we call the accounting of the puzzle, okay? And so that's kind of the cause and effect relationship. The way that this map is set up, I'm going to kind of go like this. This right here is virtually, in a way, all of your operations, okay? And I may miss it just a piece or so, but let's call this your operations, all righty? As your operations happen, eventually things start floating up. Your accounts payable, so if you have a PO and you don't pay it all the way out, what does it do? It creates a payable, correct? Your accounts payable? And your accounts payable eventually shows up where? On your balance sheet, okay? It's kind of a cause and effect. It starts generally, imagine cream kind of rising to the top of the puzzle, okay? If you have a customer who gets an invoice and they don't pay for the whole thing, what does it create? A thing called a receivable, correct? What does the receivable do? It shows up on the balance sheet, okay? Eventually, all those type of things. Mick said, you know what? I actually need to create an investment, okay? Like, I'm going to put $5,000 or $100,000 or whatever the value is into the balance sheet, okay? How does that happen, okay? Basically, at some point, you have to do a deposit that affects your banks, that eventually affects your balance sheet, correct? Kind of the cause and effect relationship there, ready? And what also happens is you have to kind of record that. So that's not a normal deposit. Normally, we consider our deposits, monies from invoice payments get deposited and eventually hit the bank. However, that would be a special one. We'd have to create another little miniature piece over here saying, hey, I need to hold this investment piece. This is part of my equity in the company, okay? So we would create a little thing that we call a user-maintained balance sheet item. We would still do a deposit, still affects the bank, but it kind of eventually comes back to this piece of the puzzle, okay? Everything kind of slowly starts flowing up to what's going on. So guess what? As we bring in a PO and it hits our general inventory pool, what actually happens on the balance sheet, just in general? So I just got new inventory. I got 20 of this and 40 of this and 50 of this. What does the balance sheet do? It needs to show, hey, I have inventory, correct? This is considered an asset. So basically, once again, we're hitting this floats up as far as what's going on. As I sell something, so boom, I just sold 5 of those and 10 of these other little things. What happens there? Usually when you do a sale, guess what happens? 1, your inventory goes down, which modifies the balance sheet. But 2, you have a thing called revenue and cost of goods, okay? So that actually affects your thing called the P&L, or your profit and loss statement. So instantly, as soon as something happens down here in this operations quadrant, it instantly kind of starts affecting what's going on, okay? So the other piece of the puzzle that we haven't really talked about a whole lot yet is a thing called expenses, okay? So right here, this little piece of the puzzle, this is money coming out of the bank, okay? So your expenses deals with banks. It also deals with paying for payroll, things that are owed. This is REIs, is short for reimbursements. We're like, who do I owe money for? We have to pay for POs, stock units, floor plans. This whole half of the puzzle right over here deals with banks and expenses, okay? Expenses can be in multiple different places. They can either show up on the P&L, underneath the gross income, like basically the gross revenue, if you will. And then you can make them show up here. They can also show up under cost of goods. They can also be special and be like just tied to balance sheet items, like certain things that are just for balance sheet pieces, okay? And so basically, we're going to be talking with a bunch of these different pieces of the puzzle. And in order to not be like, just jump in there and like just start going, what we're going to do is we are going to kind of take a look at what has already been done in the system. We've been playing for 2 days. We haven't even touched any accounting, but I want to show you automatically what's already showing up for roll call even though we haven't touched any of the accounting, okay? That's where we're going to kind of start.